This is My First Job in Sports, the show created to kickstart your journey toward a successful career in the sports industry. Presented by SBRnet, your comprehensive source for data focused on sports fans and more. Here's your host of My First Job in Sports, Neil Schwartz.
You know, Dr. G, it's really been fun working with you on the last, I think, half dozen shows. I mean, you know, we're really starting to click. And, you know, I really want to thank you for, you know, giving up your time and expertise to be a part of My First Job in Sports. It's been a great experience so far.
Oh, no, thank you for calling me. I mean, I've been having so much fun talking to these sport industry professionals. It makes me feel like I'm closer to the sport industry because that's where my heart is. So it's been a blast.
Me too. Hey, so welcome to this episode of My First Job in Sports. This show is all about helping students with a little information, education, motivation, inspiration, and navigation. Hey, what we're here to do is we're here to help you get that first job in sports by understanding what other students have done in order to get that first job. And of course, I'm with my co-host, Dr. Ashley Gardner, who, you know, again, has been a wonderful addition to the show. Dr. G, great to see you once again.
Awesome to see you, Neil. And happy belated birthday, everyone should know.
And I will not be telling anybody exactly how old I am. I will just say that I have become, as my wife says, what did she call me? They're a curmudgeon baby boomer. So just take it for whatever it's worth. Hey, but one of the things, of course, SBRnet is involved in is Getting the Game right over my shoulder. And Getting the Game is actually where I met Dr. G. We met. It's a wonderful event focused on helping students of color specifically get jobs in sports. But Dr. G, talk a little bit about the event and what you kind of saw while you were there.
Yeah, it was really a beautiful sight to see all of those students of color come together to really learn. They were really hungry students coming into the different sessions, learning, and then all of the excursions that you set up for those students, I think was just incredible. Going to Under Armour and just all of those things that you had, but then also your sponsors. They had so much free gear. Even me, just as a moderator, I needed an extra suitcase for all of that stuff that I got from your sponsors. And so Neil just does a really fantastic job at putting it all together on every angle. There was no stone unturned.
Dr. G, I don't know if you can tell, but it's a real labor of love for me. It goes well beyond, you know, making money, or it goes well beyond, you know, the business success that I have with SBRnet and other things. It really is a labor of love and something that I really, really believe in. Hey, just a reminder, first of all, you're listening to the latest episode of My First Job in Sports. Later on, we're going to be speaking with Luca de laPena from Austin FC of the MLS. Great opportunity to hear about someone that had some great success already in just a short period of time in the sports business. Hey, by the way, if you enjoy the show, make sure you like us, make sure you follow us, make sure you subscribe to us. I'm running out of things you can do. But one of the new segments that we've added here on My First Job in Sports is what we like to call Neil's Data Dump. And hey, you know, look, I'm a data guy. My daughter, who I'm going to see tomorrow, likes to say that my father is the oldest living data nerd. That probably isn't exactly true, but I'll give it. But, you know, one of the things that we were looking at, you know, when it comes to data is I've been looking at tracking sports fandom really across the generations. And in the most recent study of sports fandom produced by us, SBRnet, you know, Gen Z fans actually make up about 21% of all sports fans, not the largest of the generations. However, the Gen Z fans have grown by over 12% from 2023 to 2024 and really have shown the largest growth among all the generations, whether it's millennials, the Gen Xers, or the baby boomers. So, you know, while they may not be the largest in terms of volume for a lot of teams, a lot of leagues, a lot of other businesses related to sports, the Gen Zs really hold the key to future growth and understanding what are their differences, because they consume sports in a completely different way than me, the baby boomer, and then Dr. G, the
millennial.
Okay, the millennial, Dr. G, and also my children are also millennials, and they consume sports differently. So again, it's a great way to use data because it helps to tell a story. And the story is that younger fans consume sports differently. And by understanding how those differences, you're really able to make an impact for brands, teams at the league level, advertisers, sponsors, you name it. So enough of us. Let's get to Luca de laPena from Austin FC. Today, we are really excited. We have Luca de laPena. He is a former student at Baylor University, currently working for Austin FC. Luca, welcome to My First Job in Sports.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. I'm excited to chat with you guys.
Great. We're excited too. So, sometimes I dive into people's bios and all that, but, I've been instructed that I'm better off letting you dive into your bio. So why don't you kind of give us a little bit about your background, how you got your start in sports, and, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. I think for me, I was born in Mexico City, so I'm a immigrant to the United States, but I've been here for almost 25 years now. I grew up in California, primarily in San Diego. And it's really since then that I've wanted a career in sports. So I was fortunate enough to have season tickets to the San Diego Chargers. I miss them being in San Diego, not there in LA, but me and my dad would head to the matches every Sunday, and it was always an amazing time. Ever since then, I knew I wanted to work in sports. And I think when it came time to pick a college to attend, Baylor checked a lot of boxes for me, but it was kind of a difficult process for me in the sense that I didn't have an example to follow. Both my parents, went to school in Mexico. I didn't have cousins, aunts, uncles that lived in the States. So it was very much kind of choosing my own path. And Baylor had the sports strategy and sales program, which I ended up majoring in. And it was a school with a lively sports atmosphere in terms of having good football and basketball programs. It also appealed to me from a faith perspective. So all roads kind of led to Waco, and had a great 4 years at Baylor, where, as I mentioned, I studied sports strategy and sales and management information systems. And that got me some connections in the sports industry. I graduated in 2021 with my first job being with the Sacramento Kings in the NBA.
Saw that.
Was there for a year, and now I've been with Austin FC for almost 3 years. It's kind of hard to believe I've been outside of college as long as I was in college. So it's been a great start to my career.
And Luca, what I find interesting about your journey is that you now work in data and analysis. So I want you to go back to your time at Baylor. You're in Neil's good friend, Dr. Wakefield's classes. And you're navigating the sports sales streets, in a sense. And the primary question I have is, what made you want to go into the analytical side of sports? Because I teach Microsoft Excel, I teach research classes, and as soon as I get into analysis, they run away, but you ran towards it. So why?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I love the shout out for Dr. Wakefield. I feel like we could trade stories about him all day, but I've always been sort of more mathematically inclined. I feel like I think about things in terms of percentages and numbers, and I don't feel like I have the outgoingness and the demeanor of a salesperson as much. And so I feel like the analytics side was always appealing to me, on top of just being, the typical college kid that was obsessed with sports statistics and things like that. So that was always more interesting to me, really, from the jump. And I feel like I've always, I don't know if fun is the right word, but I do like to play around in Excel and learn formulas and kind of get those technical skills. I think once I got to about my junior year is when I added the MIS major. And that's kind of when I was able to learn things like SQL. And that was really my first intro to writing any kind of code. And that was also appealing to me. So I think it's partly just kind of my more introverted demeanor, but it's also just an, inclination to be drawn to numbers since as long as I can really remember.
Luca, I'm a data provider first and foremost. And, anytime I talk to somebody who loves working with data, it brings a smile and a certain warmth to my heart. But, I see that you really, both as when you were at the Sacramento Kings and also now with Austin FC, that you were heavily involved with CRM, or what they call customer relationship management, or something like that. Tell us a little bit about what that means and why you tended to gravitate towards that specific area.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a fun career path, just in the sense of like I get to tell stories about our fans through this data. When in undergrad, it's a bit difficult to get like hands-on Salesforce experience in sports, or any CRM. I think Dynamics is the other big one. You can do like the Salesforce modules, but nothing quite compares to like having real fan data, because like, the Salesforce trailhead is going to have like generic stuff. It's not going to really apply to sports. But I think I've really enjoyed like kind of the process of being able to tell stories with that data. Whether it's to find like leads, which is something I did a lot of in Sacramento, or to, get audiences for marketing, or to tell stories for partnerships about our fans, which is something I'm very much involved in with Austin FC. So it's kind of a cool and fun strategy to like take the data that we have, kind of grow the audience. Like obviously our goal here is to like increase the size of our database, but to increase it in a scalable way where we're also learning more about our fans. And so being able to take all that CRM data, tell stories with it in marketing and partnerships and sales has been like a lot of fun for me.
So, as a CRM specialist or analyst, can you give us a little insight into what your day to day looks like? Because I'm sure a lot of students may not even know what this possible career path could look like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's definitely hard to get like a really good feel for in like a sports marketing undergrad. So totally. The one thing that's kind of fun about working in sports is like the day to day does change quite a bit, like depending on whether you're in season or whether you're not in season. For me, like right now, what I'm doing in CRM is I'm designing some processes to track like season ticket member renewals. And so I'm building out opportunities. I'm building out processes to determine if someone is like a red flag account, or if someone is at risk of dropping their seats, or whatever it might be. So the day to day is definitely versatile in the sense of like I might be writing some SQL code to get an audience in the warehouse, and then bring that audience into Salesforce to action it in some way. Maybe it's to like identify these red flag accounts and then assign them to our reps so that they can reach out to them and kind of get a feel ahead of the renewal process. And so my day-to-day includes a lot of tasks like that. And then as I kind of alluded to earlier, my path has led me more into partnerships world recently. And so I'm putting together like stats to help sell partnerships. So like our partnership sales reps might come up to me and be like, hey, is X company a fit for Austin FC? And I'll kind of go into a couple platforms that we have to try and tell the story of, yes, this is a great partner because Austin FC fans are 5 times more likely to be interested in Y product, or putting together sweepstakes to kind of help pitch that partner, and kind of putting all that data together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I can tell you, when I talk to students, one of the things I talk about frequently is that there's really, only 3 or 4 ways that a team or an entity can actually grow their business. And one of the ways, of course, is to sell more to your existing customer base. And understanding your existing customer base is really, at the heart of that. I mean, I'm a Florida Panthers season ticket holder, and I have an app. And when I go to buy popcorn, they know everything I bought, and they recommend things to me. And I have to say that while it's a little bit intrusive, I also find it to be really helpful. So, I think what you're doing, really has a real big understanding for how teams can grow. So let's walk backwards a little bit, though. Let's walk backwards to, you're a junior, senior at Baylor. Were there any internships? Did you do any internships before you got that first job with the Sacramento Kings? And how important do you think internships are for outgoing students?
Yeah, I did have an internship between my junior and senior year. It was a required part of the curriculum, but even if it wasn't, it's definitely something I would have sought out. The experience was honestly great for me. It did come at a tricky time for me personally, because I actually got offered an internship with an ad agency who works with sports leagues and sports teams they were called Forefront at the time.
Never heard of them.
They've since been acquired by Legends.
That I have
But
heard.
I got offered the role in February of 2020 with the idea of starting in summer of 2020. And obviously, we don't need to go into what happened that spring, but
yes, we do not.
The internship ended up looking extremely different to what I was expecting. Like I was looking into getting an apartment leased for the summer in Dallas, and next thing you know, I'm back home in the Bay Area, taking all these calls from a tiny desk in my like childhood bedroom. So it was a great experience nonetheless. I think the Forefront team was incredible to me. It was an opportunity that sort of came through the Baylor S3 network. The guy who hired me was his name is Brooks Byers. He's still at the company, I believe. He's an S3 alum, and so he kind of came to Kirk Wakefield and was like, "Hey, like, do you have any students who might be a good fit for this?" My name came up. I went through the application process. Even went up to Dallas for an interview, and it was a pretty seamless fit.
Right.
I was excited about the work and got to learn a lot about the sort of digital ad environment, and was definitely able to carry that over into my job with the Sacramento Kings. So it was immensely valuable from a skills perspective, a networking perspective. Like I said, it didn't quite look the way I might have expected,
Sure.
but it was an incredible experience. I think also one thing that's tough to replicate in the college environment is just what it's like to sit in meetings, to contribute to meetings, to learn how people speak in the business world. So like all those things, like it is something that like an internship teaches you and is immensely valuable.
And so I still want you to keep and continue to talk about the preparation, essentially the preparation for your role right now, because I'm sure in your Baylor program, you took, analytics courses in a sense, and you've had your internships. But now that you're a professional in the industry, what are some things that students should be doing now if they want to work in analytics?
I think it all comes down to networking at the end of the day. When I was a junior in college, I made a goal for myself to have 2 networking calls with people in the industry a month. And it might not sound like too much, like it's one every other week, basically, sure, but it goes a long way. I think some of the relationships I've built as a junior in college are still people I talk to this day. Like one of the first people I was able to build a relationship with, he is someone I still have a quarterly meeting with, and he was somebody who worked in MLS and definitely helped open doors for me once I was looking for
would
a
you
job
consider him
here.
Your mentor?
I would, yeah. Yeah, he's, like I said, he's someone I still keep in touch with. I actually met him for the first time in person in February, which was great. So
wow.
Yeah.
So it's only been let's say Zoom or phone call relationship up till now? Email?
Yes. Yeah, he was another Baylor S3 alum who I was able to get connected with in school. And yeah, it was just like basically, my senior and junior year he was someone that was giving me a lot of great advice.
Sure.
I think something we've seen in sports analytics is that there's a lot more roles now than there were 5 years ago when I was coming into it, which is awesome to see. But for me, like looking for a job as a senior, there weren't too many doors opening just because there was just a limit in terms of roles. It's kind of that simple.
I see a lot, of the data business, obviously, and analytics. And, a lot of students, when they think of analytics for sports, they think of on-field performance or player performance. And that important, not going to minimize it. But, from a business side, analytics, really can provide a wonderful, platform for jobs. And there's so many different types of jobs kind of within that subset. So, I think, seems like you chose a great area. Let me ask you this. You said something at the top of the interview that kind of interested me. You said you were kind of an introvert. And, that's one of the things that Dr. G and I talk about all the time is that, I'm asked to talk in classes. I do a lot of presentations. Dr. G works with, students every day. And we find a lot of the students are really shy. What did you do to overcome I'm going to go back. You called it being an introvert in order to be able to, meet people and get out there and really try to get your name out there and get your, get yourself out there.
Yeah, in full transparency, it was difficult. I'm for sure an introvert. I'm definitely someone that like once you get to know me, I can be open and a bit
Mm-hmm.
louder. But if you don't, like I'm gonna be one of the quieter kids in class and
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. But I think, like I said earlier, it was kind of just forcing myself like to have a goal in terms of like reaching out to people and talking to people. And I think one thing that was difficult for me, and I feel like is difficult for a lot of people, is like it can be discouraging to like apply for jobs and you might not hear back, or you might be like, oh, this person is like really interesting. I'd love to pick their brain. So you send them a LinkedIn message and like that
Sure.
message doesn't get returned. So I think that can be difficult to deal with, and like it can lead to just kind of like, well, like this doesn't work. So for me, it was just kind of like forcing myself to get out of that comfort zone. And I think once you kind of persevere, you realize, hey, I actually can build a relationship with this guy, or hey, this person actually is willing to help me. They are willing to be in my corner. I think there's more people that are willing to help you than you might realize because you get a rejection or two when you're an undergrad.
I completely and 100% agree. And so really talking about your boldness here, I really want to go back to your roles, because what I find interesting is that you got a role with the Sacramento Kings, right? An NBA job that, as my students call, a sexy job because it's with, the NBA. But then after a year, you transitioned into soccer. And so can you talk about that shift? Why? Why the shift? Did you always want to get to soccer? Or what was attractive that led you to go from NBA to soccer?
Yeah, it's a great question, and for me it's a bit of a more personal answer. I don't think I was like intentionally going from basketball to soccer. I grew up a Warriors fan, so I loved the NBA, loved watching
Sure.
basketball, and it was very fun to be just like a couple hours away from my parents, getting to play the Warriors and getting to watch like an up and coming Kings franchise at the time. Um, So yes, it was definitely in a lot of ways sexier than like the MLS, which tends to be a bit more like blue collar. But the reason I ultimately made the switch was it was personal. I was in a long-term relationship at the time with a girl who I met in college, and it's a question that I get a lot, and it's like I don't have anything bad to say about why I left the Kings. Like
Sure.
it was an unbelievably wonderful, amazing first job in sports. Like I couldn't have asked for better leadership. I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity to learn the industry. Obviously, like getting a job within the NBA right out of school is like an unbelievable blessing, and that wasn't lost on me. So um, it was a personal decision to come to Austin. But the MLS has been a really cool thing to be a part of too. It's definitely up and coming. Like a little bit after I started here, Messi comes on board and we get this Apple TV deal, and there's
Yep.
a lot of hype and
Yep.
buzz, and we have the
Yep.
World Cup next year. So it's an incredibly exciting time to be a part of soccer. And it's been cool to be part of a newer organization as well, because Austin FC, we're in our fifth season. So we've only been around a few years, and that was
Sure.
a pretty big change from the Kings, who have been around since like, I want to say like the 1950s or something like that. Where they have like a very established database, and we come here and we're growing our database. We have
Sure.
like a fractional percentage of what the Kings have, and with the Kings there was also like a few more resources that NBA teams are more likely to have than MLS teams. There's differences in like the ticket sales approach. In Sacramento, we were fighting, clawing, and scratching for every last ticket sale, and when I got to Austin FC, it was kind of kicking our feet up in terms of ticket sales, just because we were like the hot young ticket in town. So it was definitely changes in a lot of different ways. But the ultimate decision to move from the NBA to Austin really was more on the personal side.
In your experience, and since you've been out of school since 2021, what are some of the common mistakes that you see students making as they are trying to get into the sports business or get that first job in sports?
I think it's an over reliance on the technical skills. The technical skills are obviously important, but I think when it's come to hiring people for additions to my team, that's not always the first thing we look at, especially for someone coming out of school.
Mm-hmm.
I think we look for people that go above and beyond in like trying to learn technical skills.
Sure.
But first and foremost, we are looking for culture fits. We're looking for people who are going to be teachable, coachable, and at the end of the day, like we are looking for people that are going to sit next to us for 40 hours a week. So as simple as it sounds, like we kind of try and find someone that's a personable fit first and someone who's willing to learn. We don't like necessarily, like it's great if you have it, but we don't necessarily look immediately to like, oh, this person is incredible when it comes to writing SQL code, or this person has 14 Salesforce certifications or whatever it might be. So I think you have to try and sell yourself as a person
Always
before you sell yourself as like this technical guru.
So when thinking about selling yourself to these organizations that you want to work for, one thing you said earlier about the Sacramento Kings is that you couldn't have asked for a better first job in sports. So kind of in that same thought, what are some green flags that students can look for in organizations to know that, okay, this is the best culture fit for me. This is where I need to be to develop and to grow.
Yeah, it's a tough question. For me, it was just having confidence that the managers and the hires and the people whose team you're going to be on have like a definitive growth plan for you, like that you're not just going to be thrown into the fire, that there's going to be an adjustment period, that their expectations are reasonable, and that there's someone that, you know, there's a mutual level of that we're going to get along and we're going to be able to work together and build something. And I think it's just kind of having that like long-term vision of, hey, we're going to put you in this role with the goal of X, Y, Z. I think when you're entering a role, you kind of want to think about in the sense of like, okay, like here's what the person before me did. How can we like level this up? And I think having that plan is just about like asking the right questions, making sure that you're aligned, making sure that there's a plan for growth, and ultimately just trusting that the people who's going to hire you are going to have your best interest in mind. It's definitely more art than science. But it's just making sure that you have confidence in that for me.
You know, one of the things that, you know, you said is that there's kind of a little bit of a delineation between kind of hard skills, Excel, Salesforce, SQL database, you know, writing Python code, whatever it might be, which are clearly hard skills. And then the soft skills, being able to tell a story, being able to write a report that makes sense and all that. How important, and where did you pick up your soft skills, by the way?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. I think like something that I think about a lot in my job is, and I'm definitely far from like the most advanced when it comes to any of these hard skills, but at the end of the day, like I am creating presentations or stories for people that don't understand the ins and out of like a data warehouse and data management and all that stuff. And so you just kind of have to keep your audience in mind. Like if I'm presenting to our head of partnerships or our head of marketing, head of ticketing, they, at the end of the day, they just want like a one sheeter with here's the most important things. Here's how we can action it. You can't get like too in the weeds on these things or you might kind of just lose your audience. So
I agree.
Yeah, the first thing is definitely just keeping the audience in mind. And what was the second part of that question, if you don't mind?
Well, it's just about where you picked up. Did you learn some of these soft skills while you were at Baylor, or was this something that you acquired more when you got out of school and you went through the Kings and then now obviously at Austin FC?
It's a little bit of both. I think the S3 program definitely did a good job of kind of giving me that like well-rounded perspective because in addition to like the data classes, which we've talked about today, I also took sales classes. I also took a class that was on like partnership marketing
that's from Dr. Lane Wakefield, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dr. Lane teaches an incredible digital marketing class, which is a great help for me as well. But kind of having that like well-rounded perspective, like I remember I once had to give like a mock sales pitch for a partnership to Baylor football or something like that. And you kind of have to, in that sense, realize that the person you're pitching this to like just doesn't need all of the nitty-gritty data behind the scenes. They just want to know how it's going to impact the business. And I think part of that came from the S3 experience. And part of it is definitely just like trial and error in the first gig. Like I think there's a temptation when you first get to your job in sports to kind of flex your muscles a bit when it comes to like some projects. You're like, look at all this back end work I did. I have these 79 bullets on XYZ. I think it's just kind of taking a step back in that sense, realizing who your audience is, and yeah, telling a concise story at the end of the day.
And what I love about what you just said is that you pretty much were alluding to you can't necessarily be afraid to not necessarily fail, but give yourself grace, especially in that first job in sports. Because, like you said, when we first get in sports, we feel like we need to do everything and show them that we're the best. However, take that time to develop, to grow. So, can you talk about and just really tell the students why it's so important just to give themselves grace? Because that you were hired for a reason.
Oh yeah, I think that's incredibly important as well. I think, I felt like pretty confident going into my first job in the NBA because I'd gone to this, very great collegiate sports program and I felt well prepared. And then I got there and my head was swimming for like 6 months, right? Like there's nothing quite that can prepare you in the classroom for how everything in sports is connected, because you take your sales class, you take your partnerships class, you take your marketing class. You don't get a great feel in college for how those departments work together. And so for me, at least, it was really hard to kind of get the understand the web of everything, if that makes sense. Like
where they connect.
Everything is connected. And as the data team, you're in a lot of senses like the backbone of all of that data. Like every team is coming to you for their data. Like you manage all of it basically. And yeah, it's kind of like I didn't really know what like a stadium events team did. The Kings were like the Golden One Center in Sacramento is a massive concert venue as well. So I didn't know how the ticketing business did there. And we had people that were marketing managers for basketball, and we had people that were doing the same for concerts. And just that data flow was like something that I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna know how all this works. And then you get humbled a little bit for sure. But yeah, you just have to give yourself grace and put your head down, be diligent, build relationships across the organization, and then things will eventually fall into place.
So Luca, we're coming up a little bit here on our 30-minute kind of time frame that we like to talk about. But Dr. G had me talk to me about adding a new segment to the interviews on my first job in sports. We're going to call this the lightning round. So you're going to be limited to kind of short answers on this one, but we just going to run right through it. What was your favorite class at Baylor?
My favorite class at Baylor was Dr. Wakefield's analytics class. We were using a lot of cool tools to kind of learn how to analyze ticketing data or marketing data. That was a blast.
Best place for pizza in Waco?
It has to be Shorty's. I feel like that's the only answer.
Okay. I'm going to kind of take a note of that if I ever get to Waco. Favorite sports team, not the one you're working for?
It's the now Los Angeles Chargers. Like I said, I wish they were still in San Diego, but they do still have a place in my heart.
Have you been to SoFi Stadium out of curiosity?
I have. I've been to 2 games now, and they were both massive losses. So I don't think I'll be back soon. But
that's a magnificent facility, though. As sports stadiums go, I think that SoFi really, I think and the Reliance Stadium in Vegas are incredible. Okay, here's the next one. When you were younger and you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I mean, I wanted to be an athlete. But yeah, I think with the inclination to numbers, which is always kind of a strength for me, eventually realized that wasn't going to happen. So I realized, hey, I could probably still work for a sports team.
Last question. I love going to live sports events. That's what what is your greatest experience that you've had at a live sporting event?
I think this one ties back into work. I was my first season with Austin FC. We finished second in the conference, and we won our first 2 playoff games in franchise history at home, including one that was a penalty shootout. So I think those are the 2 that stick out to me.
Awesome. All right, Luca. Last but certainly not least, but in this case it will be last. What advice do you have for students that are coming out of school that want to get their first job in sports?
I think it's kind of what I alluded to earlier. I think there's people that are willing to help you, even if it might not feel like it. If you keep searching, you're eventually going to build good relationships, and people will be able to be resources for you whether or not they hire you, they might be able to connect you to the right people. Regardless, getting those relationships, it's ultimately a relationship business. I think you guys would agree that once you're in the industry, it feels small. So just don't be afraid to kind of stick your neck out there and build these personal relationships.
That sounds like a winning philosophy, Luca. So, I want to congratulate you on your job success post-college. You've really been able to leverage what you've learned from the doctors, plural, Wakefield, and I know them both, so I have to give them a little bit of extra plug. But Dr. G and I want to thank you for coming on My First Job in Sports, Luca. We want to wish you great success in the future. And again, thanks for coming on My First Job in Sports.
Yeah, of course. This was a great time. I've never done a podcast before, so this was a lot of fun. Dr. G, Neil, appreciate you both.
Thank you for tuning in to My First Job in Sports. This show has been produced by Brad Mabey. Back episodes can be found at sportsmarketanalytics.com, on the SBRnet YouTube channel, or all major podcast platforms. If you like the show, give us a great review. Also, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or X.